Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Our topic of my presentation is transforming semiconductor designs using advanced shift left ESL methodologies. So as all of us are aware, there has been a continuous evolution in the semiconductor industry since its inception in last 6 to 7 decades. So continuous advancement in the manufacturing technology is resulting in the continuous shrinking of the geometries of transistors and packing more and more electronics inside a single chip. So if we see the complex system on chips of today, I mean, it can have multi-billion transistors inside it. Advancement in the memory technology is resulting in higher storage capacities and faster data access. Invention of microprocessors in 1970s led to the starting of the software. So the content of a product is not just defined by the hardware. Now we can have a software on top of it. The complex SoCs of today may have multiple processors inside it. In fact, some of it might have even thousands of processors with a capability to run huge amount of software on top of it. Now, designing such complex chips is not that easy. The chip design methodologies has also evolved continuously to keep pace with the complexities of the chips. Most of the evolutions in the chip design methodologies came in terms of like raising the abstraction of the chip design. So like from component level to gate level, from gate level to RTL level. And today, like we are having a new kind of methodologies, like which are becoming more and more important for the design of today's SoCs. These are known as electronic system level methodologies. ESL methodologies, we can broadly define it as a combination of two broad phenomena. One is like hardware software co-design and co-verification, which means like focusing on the design of the complete product rather than focusing on just the hardware design. And second is raising the abstraction of chip design above the RTL. So these methodologies are enabled by the high level languages like C++, System C, Python, etc. And these does not actually replace the traditional RTL to GDS flow, rather coexist with it and augment it further. So these methodologies allows us to perform various operations which were not feasible in the traditional flow. For example, like pre-silicon firmware development and testing, automated regression testing of the firmware, architecture analysis quite early in the cycle, high-level synthesis, simulating at the SoC level or at the system level. So these methodologies helps us to like shift the entire design flow to the left, reduce time to market, optimize various parameters like power, performance, area for a specific application, and moreover reduce the overall cost of the chip development. Virtual prototype is the most widely used use case of the ESL methodologies. So virtual prototype is a fast executable model of a chip, which can run the unmodified software binary. So I can load a real software binary on it, which I'm going to load on the real hardware. The same binary without any modification, I can load on the virtual prototype, and it's going to run just like it's running on the hardware. So these virtual prototypes are the functional representation of the hardware, which are mainly loosely timed, register accurate functional models developed using some high level language like System C, TLM, C++, etc. So these virtual prototypes are used for software development and testing, hardware software integration and system validation, developing the automation of the regression for the firmware, or architecture design and exploration. The primary benefit is like we can shift the entire design methodology to the left, start the software development quite early in the cycle, even before the chip design is completed and fabricated. We can start the software development in parallel. So that shortens the overall schedule. Also, it enables the early feedback between hardware and software. So if any changes are required, these can be done quite early in the cycle. It provides improved control and debug visibility compared to the real hardware. It's possible to do fault injection and to test the adverse scenarios, which generally is not possible to test in with the real hardware. Virtual prototypes are adaptive to frequent changes. So any change we want to do, these can be done very quickly in the virtual prototype because it's a software, it's not a hardware. And moreover, it scale more easily to massively parallel testing, etc. So like we can run maybe thousands of instances of a virtual prototype, or even a millions of instances of a virtual prototype to run the huge regression for a particular chip or particular software. A second important use case is the architecture exploration. So the most important parameters that need to be controlled through these architecture exploration, maybe like performance or power, or there could be other parameters as well. So the models has to be developed accordingly, depending on exactly what parameters we are trying to optimize through the exploration. So when we talk about, let's say, performance analysis kind of thing, so we have to develop the models which are suitable for performance analysis. We need to identify the portion of the design which could be become a bottleneck for the data flow and data processing, for example, memory subsystem and interconnects, etc., and develop the models of these components at more at a cycle approximate like transaction level or cycle accurate transaction level, which through which actually we can more accurately measure the latency and throughput. So we can run the application workload on top of these models. Application workload load is specific to certain application. We can run on it and try to see how much will be the latency and how much performance numbers can be achieved. And accordingly, the architecture of the chip can be tweaked to achieve the numbers. In case of power, so we can actually annotate the different parts of the models with the power numbers, which may come from, let's say, IP data sheet from the manufacturer, or it may come from the previous version of the SoC. And these can be overlaid on the models in certain format. So like there is UPF 3.0, which is a standard, or the different customers might have their own like format through which it can be annotated. And when we run the application workload is specific to a particular application, then we can actually collate and see like how much will be the power consumption in that particular workload. And accordingly, we can actually tweak and modify the architecture to achieve the numbers. So for architecture exploration, different companies are using their own different methodology, different infrastructure. There are some standards as well, TLM 2.0, UPF 3.0. There are some commercial tools as well available. There is also an open source framework, Gem5, which is also quite widely used for this architecture modeling. The third upcoming use case is the high level synthesis, which allows us to design the chips at a higher abstraction level. So basically, we can design using a high-level language like C++ and System C, and using a HLS tool, we can actually generate the RTL. So these kind of HLS flow lead to the fast and high-quality path to RTL. The amount of code is maybe 5 to 10 times lesser than the handcrafted RTL. So that reduces the overall design efforts and overall maintenance efforts. The simulation can be 10 to 1000 times faster than the RTL. So that leads to the increased productivity. Moreover, like we can have a same code, same input code, which can result in the different kind of RTLs for different target applications, for different target technologies like FPGA, ASIC, or different technology nodes, etc. Or let's say if we are designing the chips for different application areas which might require different constraints, like in some cases we might have to optimize the power, in some cases we might have to optimize the performance or area. So depending on the different use case, generally we require slightly different RTL. But here, because we are designing at a higher level, so we can maintain as the same source code at the input level, which can actually generate the different RTL depending on the options we choose in the tool. The HLS bridges the hardware and software domains. So it opens the FPGAs to the embedded software engineers. There is a vast pool of free like C and C++ tools available, and lots of software engineers who understand these tools. And also there are lots of existing C and C++ implementation of the algorithms which may we may want to put in the software into the chip, which can act as the starting point. So HLS is becoming more popular and it's more effective, more in the computation and algorithmic centric designs. For example, computer vision, video processing, audio processing, 5G, artificial intelligence, etc. So fortunately, in these domains, like we already have lots of algorithms in the software world already. So those can be taken as a reference to start with. And if we can define a mature flow to take the existing open source algorithms, take it through the HLS flow and accelerate it inside the chip, so it can be a game changer for the industry. At Circuit Sutra, like we have executed a pilot project in which we have taken an open source image processing algorithm, and we actually make it synthesizable by modifying the code and took it through HLS to generate the RTL. Also, it's feasible to like combine the models developed at a different abstraction level for different use cases, yeah, in a combined flow to create more advanced flows. For example, let's say, I mean, if we are starting with the algorithm which is already in software and we are exploring whether we can actually, I mean, accelerate it inside the chip. So using the same source code, like we can develop the model for virtual prototyping, as well as we can take the same source code, modify it to make it synthesizable. When we are talking about virtual prototyping, then it's relatively simpler. We can take the exactly same code, just develop a thin wrapper around it, which have like maybe registers and interfaces implemented using System C, and we can have the model ready for the virtual prototyping use case. In case of HLS, it will require some work because the code has to be modified to make it synthesizable. But this the initial source code can be reused in both the cases. And moreover, one model, let's say virtual prototype model, can be used as a reference model to verify the final RTL that we get through the HLS. In the practical world, it's not always possible to have all the models at the same abstraction level for the entire chip or for the entire system. And many times we have the representation in different abstraction levels available for the different part of the chip. So like some could be in C++, some could be in System C, some could be in RTL. Uh, so I mean we can even combine these together using adapters and transactors and create a very advanced like hybrid kind of flows in which like we can have the system C simulation along with the RTL simulation, along with some part in the emulation and maybe some part running in the FPGAs. So these kind of like advanced flows enables advanced design space exploration. So it enables easy switching between software and hardware. We can do maybe a complete SOC level testing or system level testing with the real embedded software kind of test cases. We can easily do hardware software partitioning kind of exercise when we are in the process of identifying like which algorithms should be in software, which should go into the hardware to meet the certain constraints. So those kind of things are feasible with these kind of advanced flows. Now, when we are talking about like models for ESL use cases, so the one model fit all the use cases does not work actually. I mean, we have to very carefully identify that for what purpose we are developing the model. And for that purpose, we have to see what will be the right abstraction level. And then accordingly, we have to develop the model. So for each use case, it will require a slightly different model. It cannot be the same model which can be reused for all the use cases. But definitely, we can create an architecture in such a way that the code can be reused across different abstractions. So let's take example of LPDDR5, which is a widely used protocol and a component in like today's SoCs for the mobile devices, etc. So let's say if we have to develop the model of LPDDR5, there can be various use case for it. Like we might be developing for the virtual prototype, which could be for early software development. It could be for architecture exploration, or it could be, let's say, to be used as a reference model for the RTL verification. So we can try to create the architecture in such a way that it's a layered architecture, and we can actually divide the entire model into multiple layers. So let's say at the core it can be so like in case of LPDDR5 we can have three layers. So at the very core can be memory C, which is a flat memory implemented in a very optimized fashion, which can be implemented using C and C++, which just expose some APIs for read and write. So the actual storage of data will actually happen here. It does not have any LPDDR specific protocol. It does not have any modeling language like System C. The second layer can be, let's say, LPDDR5C model, again implemented using C and C++ without any dependency on System C. And it can actually have the logical implementation of LPDDR5 protocol, like logical partitioning, banks, rows, columns, and the complete state machine corresponding to LPDDR5. It can expose the APIs corresponding to each LPDDR command, like activate one, activate two, precharge, read, write. So for all the LPDDR JDEC commands, Corresponding to those, we can have a corresponding APIs exposed by the C and C++ model. The third layer can be the actual LPDDR5 system C layer, which implements the actual registers, pins, timing waveform as per the JEDEC protocol. I mean, it can also have the TLM socket if we want to bypass the register access through the actual JEDEC protocol to bring the model into a certain configuration very quickly before we actually start the transfer through actual protocol. So it's a minimal thin layer which has the dependency on system C. And so let's say if some customer is using some other modeling language in their flow instead of system C, then we just have to change this layer actually. And let's say if we want to use the model for different use cases, in case of virtual prototype for early software development, we can simply use the flat memory layer only. We don't require complete LPDDR protocol for that. We can have a thin layer which is just doing the address translation and just doing the read and writing from the flat C memory. If you want to do for, let's say, architecture exploration for LPDDR controller, then probably we'll need the LPDDR protocol implementation at the logical level at least. So we might actually use the C++ model of LPDDR5 along with some, let's say, transaction level sockets. Or in some cases, even the pin level model implemented in system C that can be actually faster than corresponding RTL model. So even that can be used for architecture exploration. And the complete like pin level, pin accurate and cycle accurate model can also be used as a reference for verifying the RTL, etc. Now, today, all of us understands that these ESL methodologies are becoming very important. In fact, these are the essential components in the design of any complex SOC today. But it's not that easy to adopt these. There are some challenges in the adoption of ESL. One of the primary challenges is that it requires very unique skill sets, which is a combination of computer science and semiconductors. So on one side, you have to be very good in C, C++, data structures, algorithms. And on the other side, you need to have a good understanding of like SOC architecture, digital design, simulation, little bit exposure to Verilog, system Verilog, etc. So it's very difficult to like, I mean, have the resources which have a combination of these unique skills. And moreover, I mean, just learning a modeling language is not sufficient. I mean, we need to have a very deep understanding of the abstraction level and modeling techniques for different use cases. For example, like if we are developing a model for virtual prototype, then our objective in that case is the model has to be very fast. So we in that case we develop the loosely timed transaction level models which are register accurate, and at least that functionality should be accurate, which is visible to the software. But we may not actually develop the underlying microarchitecture, etc. When we are developing the models for architecture exploration, then we identify the portion of the design which are relevant, and we actually develop the models for those portions more in a cycle accurate transaction level model kind of fashions. In case of HLS, the criteria is different. The primary criteria is that the code has to be synthesizable. So we cannot just use any kind of arbitrary C, C++ code or any arbitrary system C code. We have to use a synthesizable subsort of that. And if we are developing a RTL kind of model, which is pin accurate and timing accurate, yeah, so then in case we have to maybe implement the entire micro architecture for that. So, I mean, just learning the language or the modeling language is not sufficient. Lots of like understanding of abstraction and modeling techniques, that's very important. Now, Circuit Sutra have a highly effective ramp up process to groom the new professionals to become the modeling experts, which we do through our internal like training modules, modeling infrastructure, pilot projects, sample models, and sample virtual platforms, etc. Circuit Sutra's mission is to accelerate the adoption of ESL methodologies in the industry. We are a company headquartered in India, having the development centers in Noida and Bangalore in India, and an office in USA in Santa Clara. We are in the business for more than 17 years, and we are supporting the semiconductor industry since 2005. We have a world-class ESL team of around 50 professionals, having a total combined experience of more than 250 years in the ESL domain. We also got awarded by the Accelera Systems Initiative for driving the Accelera standards in the Indian ecosystem. So today, probably we are the only company like which has 100% focus on the ESL domain, and which understand all the aspects of the ESL. We don't do anything else apart from it. So our offerings are also very much aligned with our mission. So we provide the SOC modeling services through which we set up the world-class project teams to work as an extension of the customer's R&D team, either remotely or on-site at the customer site. We have a highly specialized training, which we call System C4 virtual prototyping. So this training has from Circuit Sutra's tried and tested internal ramp-up program, which is highly effective for grooming non-System C professionals to become the modeling experts. So this training is beyond the System C language. I mean, it covers System C language, but beyond that, it covers the techniques, modeling techniques and modeling methodologies, which are actually specifically requires for the virtual prototyping. Over the period of time, we also developed some reusable modeling methodology like Circuit Sutra modeling library, virtual prototype quick start packages, which can be used by customers and which help them to quickly get started with the modeling projects. So today, we are very much capable to become the SOC modeling partner to the global semiconductor industry. We have the right skills to shift the semiconductor industry to the left. Yeah, so that's all I have in my presentation today. If you need any further clarification, so feel free to write to me through email. Thanks for attending this webinar today.